Being husband and wife, moving forward and starting our life together. I love you very much.
All right, baby. We did it. It's done. You are now married to me. Yeah.
Our school was founded by a queen, by an ali'i. And as a Native Hawaiian woman, that's so important to me because I want to continue to honor her legacy. Queen Emma loved to learn, and I know she wanted the children of Hawaii to thrive and be successful.
That queen inspired a lot of our Hawaiian kids, right? And the culture that it brings here is a family-oriented culture with of course, their class size and all that, but it allows the kids to come together and allows the faculty and parents to come together as a family.
We were really drawn to the prep for a number of reasons, but I think mainly because of its philosophy of learning and really this kind of active, engaged learning style.
For our middle child, we noticed a positive transition when he came from his old school to this school. It was his environment that made him want to learn. And it wasn't the structure where sit behind your desk, get your pencil, get your paper out. No, it was, Mr. Reckman's gonna let me bounce on the exercise ball, but Mom, I'm learning everything. It's just a different type of environment that they're placed in that allows them to thrive.
You know, really just coming to understand not only some of the stereotypical differences between boys and girls, but the developmental differences. Some of the science, literally, behind the differences between boys and girls. And so when you know that and you understand that, what you can do then is create an environment in which boys will thrive.
They actually like colder temperatures, even things like that, you know, has gone into developing the prep.
They're target learners, they're spatial learners, so they have to move.
Boys typically are quite competitive, right? So maybe if we're working on math, we divide the class into two teams and we're competing and we have to, you know, answer the math facts as a team. You know, the boys are so into it, all they want to do is win, and they don't even realize the math facts that they might be spewing out, and the answers that they're getting, and that collaboration with one another. So again, just really understanding what makes boys tick, how they are, and creating a classroom environment that really recognizes that and allows them to feel just whole and comfortable in that space. While we understand how boys are generally speaking, and while we're considering stereotypes and trying to break them down, this is not to say that the prep is a school for one type of boy, you know. And I think that's really a testament to the teachers and their expertise and their just genuine care for the students and seeing them succeed.
Every kid is truly known and understood and really valued for who they are.
I really think that having this very low student-teacher ratio gives the teachers the ability to really pivot with each student and really get to know each student. You know, our older son, he was a little bit hesitant to read, and in kindergarten we would have conversations with Ms. Schick, the teacher, and at first it was like, okay, we're gonna kind of really push him on this and see how that goes. And then she told us, okay, let's back off. Let's just back off and just really don't push it. And the next thing we knew, he became a reader, right? She knew kind of his personality and what he needed in order to really engage with it, and she played with it a little bit. So it was one of those, like, having a teacher who was really paying attention mattered.
For us as parents, it's just such a relief, that knowing that we're leaving our children in great hands.
We're sending out learners that love learning and that have a confidence in themselves as learners.
The people here are not just faculty and staff. You know, they really treat you as a part of the family, and they really keep you informed.
I think the prep offers a very different educational experience than you're going to find in most elementary schools for boys. And I believe it to be one that is more engaging for them, one that they are going to feel completely valued and whole in, and quite frankly, just fun.
Both of our boys love coming to school. They look forward to it. We're really happy with the philosophy and mentality of the school, what they're, treat each other nice, the empathy, and just the way that they enjoy school. And to me, that's really important.
We've had him in this very loving environment, kind of, small school environment, and we've gotten to know his academic strengths and some of his academic weaknesses, his personality. He's not a kindergartner anymore. We know a lot more about him, right? And so now we can make that next decision with a lot more information.
That's really what we're trying to foster here. It's the relationship building, first and foremost with teacher and student, but then, with our parents as an extension of that, but all with the same end game, with the same interest at heart in how can we grow this child to be his best self, and how can we all rally, to make that happen.
My parents were using a lot of drugs. When we were with my mom, she'd be gone for like 2 to 3 days at a time. Well, when I first got taken away, I was placed into Houmalu.
Houmalu ono kamali'i, roughly translated from Hawaiian, is safeguarding our children.
So Houmalu is a 15-bed receiving home. We have children who are being referred to us from the child welfare system.
We're providing a place for these kids in these abusive situations to come into a transition home, a safe place.
They didn't make me feel like I was an outsider. They were kind of like really welcoming. We spent a lot of time outside eating snacks. Playing on the basketball court. I got to talk with some of the other kids, and we shared stories and we shared feelings and stuff, and we kind of just helped we helped each other to get through it. The food was very comforting. The food was pretty good too. It makes you feel like you're not alone because there are other kids like you. Being at Houmalu was actually one of my favorite places to be out of all the other foster homes I've ever been in.
I think the most gratifying thing about being involved in this is getting letters and notes back from the kids. And in many cases, it's the safest, best place I've ever lived, and I hated to leave it.
We do surveys at the end of every youth stay, and a lot of our surveys refer to Houmalu as a really fun place and a place where they feel like they had a vacation. We get that word a lot, vacation. It was a vacation. And it makes you wonder if we're providing a safe home with 3 meals a day, time for them to play like kids, parental structure, and limits. It makes you wonder when they refer to that kind of environment as a vacation, what kind of environment did they come from?
When you see that we've been able to change so many lives, even if it's just a small change, maybe it was what helped them turn the corner. But we're very proud of what we've done.
To the staff, I would want to say thank you for always being there and helping us as kids find where we want to be and who we could be able to come one day, and letting us know that it's not our fault.
I have a painting in my office that was painted several decades ago, and it says, Wahikiki Community Center, by the people, for the people. The history of Wahikiki Community Center is that it was literally created by a group of community members that really had concern for the community and saw needs in the community with both Keiki and Kupuna. So we started in 1978 with a senior program and a Keiki program. When I first started here 8 years ago working, I walked into the preschool the first time and that joy was just there. The goal of the preschool is to close the achievement gap between children from lower and higher income families. One of the few interventions that research has shown is effective in closing that gap is quality early childhood education. Studies also show that when children start off in kindergarten on par with their classmates, they tend to stay on grade level and continue to success. Whereas children who start below the level of their classmates in kindergarten tend to fall further behind, unfortunately, and become the highest percentage group of high school dropouts and going on social assistance and things like that in adulthood. So you don't think that what you would do for a child before kindergarten would affect the rest of their lives, but research really shows that it does affect them. And so that's why we feel like our mission for the preschool is so critical. And that remains our mission. So that was our mission pre-COVID, and it remains our mission after COVID. And same with this Kupuna program. You know, our mission was to keep our Kupuna well and healthy and prevent premature decline, and that remains our mission after COVID. During the lockdown, a lot of our seniors were not technically savvy. While a lot of us, you know, could order our groceries online, could order, you know, things on Amazon, and they didn't have access to that kind of technology, and they just sort of felt stuck in their homes. And so we created a iPad lending library. We have a handful of iPads, and we train seniors to use them. Some of them have started ordering their medications and food online, but also just to create emotional and social support, because many of them, what's been hurting them is the social isolation. We've developed some online classes and social gatherings, just a variety of activities and live opportunities to connect with one another.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Pop Live. Sadly, it is just me today. Well, only for now. Jamie's busy, but in her place, I got a very special guest. Fun fact, we actually were high school classmates. He's a year younger than me, but because I was so poor in my studies, I was in his science class because you know, I needed to come back and take science again. But anyways, he is now a very successful and accomplished business lawyer. And well, last week when Brian asked us to cover, he had some questions on some topics that maybe we could, you know, get some guests on. He talked about recruiting board members and volunteers and such. And it just so happened that this friend of mine is doing a month-long social media campaign where he's dedicating all of his posts to nonprofit stuff. So whether it's law tips and stuff or other things. And like a day or two after we had gotten this suggestion or request about board recruitment, my friend put on a wonderful post about, you know, tips and what he calls the 3 T's to look for when recruiting board members and such. He's got experience of not only running board, but also being a volunteer a board member as well. So he kind of has a little bit of insight into both sides of things. And also the thing that I thought would be really helpful and interesting is a lot of the nonprofits that I talk to, a lot of the struggles that they have or difficulties they have is recruiting younger board members. A lot of the pool that nonprofits have to choose from are kind of the older ones that and it's kind of the same group of people, so they kind of are spread thin, so the talent pool, so to speak, is getting thin, and so they want to find maybe a younger generation of board members, and there's so much value that and when I say younger, they're still old like me, but they're like in their 30s, 40s, that age range. And so, that's been kind of the difficulties. How do some of these nonprofits connect with and get this younger generation of board recruits on board? So he is that age range. And so I thought it'd be great to have him on. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our guest, Mr. Ryan Cahew. Ryan, what's up?
Thank you, Nolan. Can you hear me? Sorry for all the technical difficulties. I guess
no
I have. I'm not going to name who our carrier is for the office, but I believe there's probably slowdown on our part. But anyway, please bear with me, and please let me know if I'm frozen again. But thank you for the intro, and thank you for having me today.
Of course. And don't worry, last week we had a special guest who also had internet speed issues, and we got around it. It turned out to be a fantastic episode. So it wouldn't be a Pop Live without our guests having some kind of internet difficulties.
All I can say is I'm an attorney, so just listen to my words. Don't look at my face.
But you have such a the other thing too is I mentioned to the audience that we went to high school together, and it's so funny because you still look exactly the same. It looks like you never aged a year. So when I was saying like, oh, we're talking about younger people, I was like, you actually look younger.
That, as you know, being in media, is like that is the magic of filters and lots of lighting. I have my ring light, I have the office lights. There's lots of lighting. And I was like, it's sometimes good to be a little bit blurry because then it acts as like digital makeup.
Yeah. No, I've seen you in person, Ryan. That is not the case. While some people do benefit from the digital support, yours is au natural.
Well, I thank you for the kind words, especially during this week of Thanksgiving. But I mean, I'm ready to segue to the more thankful and doing the greater good and helping out these nonprofit boards. I did catch, after unfreezing myself, some of the tail end of, some of the issues that highlight and dominate not just Hawaii nonprofit industry, but the nonprofit industry in general.
Right.
And yeah, there is a struggle for strategic recruitment and kind of succession planning as you experience the graying of nonprofit boards.
Yeah.
Well, for us, hopefully there won't be any graying when we step into those roles, but who knows?
Yeah. No, and I thought it was interesting that you have that perspective of being kind of in that target demo of board recruits that a lot of these nonprofits are looking for. And the hard part is they just don't really know how to connect, what drives and motivates your generation of board members, because I think what people, I will say our age are looking for is probably different than what the current generation of board members are motivated by, right? Would you say?
Right. So just a little bit of my background and kind of how this journey to volunteering now to being a nonprofit attorney, because I view it very much from a business angle as a type of business entity that needs help. And that's who as you already know, we talked about it a while ago, and you have the Small Business Hawaii group on Facebook, but my journey largely started coming back home and deciding to, after working for an HR company and the state legislature, of setting out my own as being a small business attorney. But, you know, gotta get out. I like to eat, as everybody knows, especially if you follow me on social media. I was like, so I had to hustle, but you know, how do you do that as a small business attorney to develop that network and relationships? Well, one of the easiest ways is volunteering. And so I found myself volunteering for a number of law-related boards. Flash forward to now, and I've helped nonprofit boards as their attorney, but also sat and been recruited through leadership programs and things like that. And what you're highlighting is my most recent board join is the Alakai Young Leaders Group of the Hawaii Food Bank, who they reached out to me and said, oh, we want you to join because you have the legal background and we want that approach, because the Hawaii Food Bank sources from all industries, whether it be government, retail, hospitality, etc. And that's kind of how they were doing their donor drives, is having kind of a point person. But how do you replenish or restore that as people age out of the big board? So a lot of times where I see for these more, exactly what you were talking about, these larger, more established charitable organizations, is that they sometimes have this younger board that the senior board or the older board has decided consciously, for the sake of leadership and succession planning, of recruiting younger leaders to replace them as they retire, age out, or kind of decide to pursue other things. You know, Hawaii has always struggled in terms of that mid-level kind of professional, go get professional or mid-level manager or skilled expertise, you know, because as you already know, this is the other thing we talked about when we had that roundtable over at your office is that for small business owners or professionals, they're like doing 3 different or 4 different things at the same time. But now I also got to be a part of this board and show up at least once a month. And then possibly it's a working board and I have to put in some volunteer hours. So, you know, it is a very, I'll put it this way. I think for nonprofits, and with a very crowded field, because a lot of larger national causes that we've seen have availed them to social media, is now they're asking for donation dollars, is you got to figure out how to outreach to a demographic that consumes most of their information via different social media platforms, right? So if you're going really, really young, everybody's on TikTok. I think I saw a report that says the amount of average hours people watch TikTok, but per month has overtaken YouTube, right? Yes. And then other people, you know, all the young people went to TikTok, but all the older people still kind of get their information from Facebook, right? So but they're still not that old on Facebook relatively compared to, right? So the thing is you have to have, I think, a multimedia strategy, and you have to dedicate. So, you know, you reached out because it did the 3 T's.
Yeah.
And that's one methodology or one tool of recruiting. But I think at the end of the day, it is be very strategic, especially for a larger or more established boards. So I know from my time as Young Lawyers Division President here, every year for elections and the rotating kind of directors and officers, we would put together a recruitment and elections committee, basically to get candidates to run and kind of express interest in continuing that. And so that's one methodology for a professional membership kind of group. As I said, with the Hawaii Food Bank, the senior board took it upon themselves to say, hey, we need to recruit heavily because we're watching donation and volunteer hours, go down. So this is happening across the board, is understanding is that communication, marketing, and that's why Pop Live exists in terms of the outreach to the community and to get information to them. But, for older folks, the methodologies are now so much more varied and different. It's not the same of, oh, let's go Pauhana and I'm going to voluntold you. Voluntold you to come join this board, and that's how we're going to get things done. Now is like, we want to do dynamic new events because that's how people are donating, pre-pandemic, and we'll probably be getting to that as the pandemic subsides. But yeah, that's the issue, is trying to be very strategic with so many hours, understanding the people that you're trying to get to volunteer part of your board, they themselves have very limited hours. And then how do you do outreach? It is still the in-person or the go-to, but I think figuring out what your organization needs, and the 3 T's kind of helps that, is, hey, do we need more people who can bring in money? Or, where are our gaps in expertise? Do we need somebody who's talented in something? Or do we straight up all don't have enough, as a working board, volunteer hours, and we need somebody who can be kind of an employee, but not really like on the board of directors to kind of just trudge through the work. And so that's why I think it's an excellent way to remember things, but it's also an excellent way to map your own organization's needs versus what is out there. And then if you have multiple board members, at least the magical 3 in terms of rules and regulations, but at least 3 directors of putting your heads together, and then, oh, who do I know? Who can I fill this role? And who can I put, if we need more money, who do we know who either has a lot of money or knows connections or is really great at networking and putting donor drives together, right? And are they? I think the biggest thing, and you're going to see it today, if, self-promotion, I'm going to drop another nonprofit November content about alternatives to forming a nonprofit. But as a preview, having that purpose alignment that I keep hinting about, that doesn't really fit on the dimension of time, talent, or treasure. You need to find people who are going to be committed to your cause or share the same purpose and objective. That is, depending on what your organization does, can be really, really niche. Or it could be something so broad as, feeding the hungry and the homeless as the food bank does. So that has a broader appeal. But yeah, I think you're going to have to dig deep, especially if you're a smaller organization wanting to grow, but have a much more narrow or purpose or specific goal.
With that being said, in talking about, well, first of all, before I get to this, for those who are unfamiliar with the 3 T's that you are describing, knowing that it's what you just said, it's not only the 3 T's, but it's a great tool. What are the 3 T's and how are they effective in this idea of properly strategizing for recruitment? So
I got this tool from, I want to say it was AUW that put on a workshop that the executive director for the nonprofit that I was volunteering invited me to go along with her to this workshop. But it's not my tool. I'm just sharing what I learned through my working experience. But the 3 T's are time, talent, and treasure. And time is just a recap, because I wasn't organized about it, but so thanks for getting me back on track. But time is exactly that, is this potential recruit able to give a bunch of time? And a lot of frequently times you see this with work from home or stay at home parents who, yes, are a little bit more flexible with their time and how they work, or retirees. So they have enough time to kind of give to the organization. the next one, talent, usually describes some type of specialized skill set or work experience that you can bring as a valuable board member. As an attorney, most people kind of reflexively look at an attorney and be like, oh, great, you can do the meeting minutes, even though that's not really why we sign up. But or for the accountant, you can be treasurer, right?
Yeah.
So those are very easy examples. But, you know, for more nonprofits that work in certain kind of sectors or industry, right? If you have a healthcare or wellness, maybe you want a doctor or a therapist or some type of medical consultant to sit on your board to bring that level of expertise. You know, if you're in hospitality or food services, maybe you want somebody in the food industry to understand how distribution works, because it allows you to speak and share that kind of language when you're asking for donations, whether, you know, if they're foodstuffs. So moving along, treasure is, everybody needs money. Money makes the world go round. I wish I could bring a better news at this time, but yeah, but treasure doesn't mean you just seek a wealthy individual. Sometimes it also means that talent and treasure overlap. It's a grant writing or somebody who's really good at navigating and understands the grant or donation kind of system, or they themselves have connections to corporate donors or wealthy donors. It isn't necessarily they are independently wealthy than them. Sometimes that's helpful, but other times it more is the connection of, can they bring their resources to bear to help the organization.
Right.
And, you know, for those three things, time, talent, and treasure, what I've told people is, you know, sometimes it's not one size fits all. You just need somebody. Sometimes somebody brings multiple things. Maybe they have time and talent, but they don't have and it isn't something you carry in spades. But the whole usefulness of analyzing a potential board recruit is you know, as I said, the organization identifying its needs, but also then who is out there, who can we know slot in or fill in these kind of gaps. And I find that boards that do strategic recruiting versus the kind of willy-nilly approach of, we're just going to ask everybody and see what we get, they're a little bit more well-honed, because I think when they find a go-to person or a go-between or somebody to kind of outreach, they spend those quality hours or quality time with the person they're trying to recruit. So maybe it's taking them coffee or drinks, or maybe it's asking them, hey, do you want to come check out our event and kind of let us know what your thoughts? It's more purposeful. But what I would like to let you know is that sometimes people take strategic as inauthentic, and I don't think that's actually the case. I think it actually allows you to refocus, and then when you kind of deep down do a gut check about who you're trying to recruit, it allows you to kind of outreach in a more authentic method after realizing is that, hey, if we put our heads together as a board and we figure out who we know and who we can ask, who will be a good fit and who won't be. And we really want to have that buy-in, because the problem with the willy-nilly approach is sometimes you don't get buy-in, good engagement, and then you have what I call the rotating kind of board members is, hey, we stick on for a couple of months or it's a year, and then I'm off to the next thing.
Right.
So that's it in a nutshell, and those are some of the positives and how I've seen people use it.
So what do you think would be another effective way of trying to, like, say they do take on this task of strategizing, but what I've heard in the past from other nonprofits is their network of people, that a pool of talent that their board knows that they can reach out and recruit to is pretty shallow. Like they all kind of know the same people. And so say they have their strategy, they know what kind of talent they need to recruit, and amongst them, just the word of mouth isn't going to do it. Do you have any suggestions of how else they can try to expand that pool of talent to look into?
So I'm going to probably give the answer that the first answer that people probably won't care for because it's so resource heavy, but that is to some extent why you sometimes hire, at least for the for-profit side, a corporate recruiter, or you pay an employment or not. There are people who kind of, if you spend some time or money on them, that can strategically help you kind of access a more of a professional base. So I'd say that might be, in that HR kind of consultant recruiting role, that might be, that suggestion may be better for a well-funded or a more established nonprofit.
Right.
In terms of segueing to what you're probably really, those really, really small ones that are first starting out, and it is the 3 people, these are my 2 best friends. Yeah. We're here for beach cleanup. We're here to teach a sports class to kid, those that they're like, okay, we went through the process of incorporating and then filing for our 501c3 status. Now what? I think there's multiple approaches, but one of them is if you don't have a deep bench of connections, you have to go and make them. There's no doubt about it. The question is do you want to use more of it's funny because I use social media, so I'm probably not using, I hate to use the word superficial, but I mean more like light touch. But do you use social media of like, hey, we're recruiting for a board as an announcement or a shout out, and then you do donor drives through Facebook or whatever to get, and then start seeing these recurring people that support your idea and then ask them, but you don't really have that initial kind of personal connection. Or the blunt reality is it does one or all 3 of you, kind of pound the pavement and start kind of outreaching and then trying to increase or expand that. Or is it, another option is do you take the temporary Band-Aid approach and let's just make the ask and just slowly recruit and kind of reset our expectations and plans. And if we add 1 or 2 people, hey, that's still great for a board. That means instead of 3 people, we have 5 people. I think people's jobs will be easier too in this when the pandemic has subsided and we can have more in-person events. I feel that if people treat new nonprofit organizations like they do new businesses for profit, that is, it just happens to be we're nonprofit, that meeting people face to face is sometimes the best way to sell your purpose or why your organization exists, and meeting that energetic, enthusiastic crowd. The only thing about that is I think it's one step above using something like Facebook to just kind of just shout out. It is that you have to understand that networking events is that it's for networking. The vetting and due diligence and engagement process is kind of why I couple the recruitment process. Is you have to have a good onboarding or engagement process beyond that. I think people think as soon as they recruit somebody and somebody's bought in, it's like, oh, they can rest their laurels. I think that's also why people struggle in getting that revolving kind of board member thing. I think the goal is to recruit aggressively, but then have an easy to understand, but an onboarding process. And what I mean by that is having a person who recruited you kind of ease you into the board. Also, I think it's great kind of having, when you do a reach out that's so light and touch like that, of setting kind of low expectations to kind of ease them into volunteering role, rather than a lot of people are like, oh my God, you're the panacea to all our problems. Now we're going to just dump a whole bunch of paperwork on you. You're going to recruit and do this event. And that can be very overwhelming. So you get burnout that way. So I think for smaller boards, to be blunt with you, is either you are going to have to spend some money. or you're going to have to spend some time and then figure out how you want to do a reach out. But coupled with that, when you bring them on, you should be prepared about what their expectations are. Is that right? If you're going to bring them on because you think they have time to spare with you, is maybe you don't dump like 5 hours a month on them. You start off with an hour and stuff like that, and slowly kind of as they get experience. Or if you're going to rely on their talented kind of expertise of, hey, if you're an attorney, we want you to do the minutes or stuff like that, providing them templates or past kind of like, rather than having them draw up from scratch. One good onboarding tool that I find is creating a welcome packet and say, welcome to the board, and go over things, but having them also sign that commitment letter of, I understand, and this is, from an attorney's point of view, in terms of volunteering, it's, yes, there's kind of contractual kind of issues and hesitancy. I get it, but a lot of times the pledge or commitment is like, I am genuinely, and you find that it sometimes works great too in terms of that. So those are the things that I would say is, you can use social media, but I still have found that in-person networking, especially if there's just 3 of you, and then what's also great is sometimes not going to the same events. I usually tell people, I even tell for-profit business partners is, if you're going to hit the pavement when there are in-person events again, might be best if you both don't show up to the same event, because then you're still adding to that same problem of I was like, you might want to diversify and kind of reach out. On that note, too, unless you're a true introvert, which I'm an introvert, oddly enough. I think we've talked about this. I would have loved to bring my dog too, and we could have had a dog kind of live hour. But anyway, I couldn't bring him today. But in terms of that introversion, I think if people really dig down deep and they look at the personal things they outreach, you might want to also do the one-off, the friend of a friend. So what I'm talking about is, maybe you have board game night with the same group of people, but those people amongst maybe you have 3 directors. Yeah, you're part of the same board game night, but then there's 6 of you for board game night. Maybe those 3 other friends might know somebody else. I think it's always best to just ask, hey, this is our problem. Do you know somebody? Or do you suggest? And again, that might not lead exactly to the board, but you do your email or you do your phone call, or you take, can I take you out to coffee with social distancing requirements right now? But, do you know somebody? And I think, we make fun of Hawaii, and you kind of brought it up of, hey, what year did you graduate? What school did you go to? Do you know so-and-so? But on the flip side, the great thing about knowing these little tribes and groupings and relying on word of mouth or friend of a friend, it kind of makes it hard for people to be flaky. Is that, hey, what's wrong with your friend? They joined my board and don't, right? The thing is that it has that kind of cringy moment where, I thought you said I could rely on this guy or this person, and to help me out, and they kind of flaked out. So I think if you just look at your personal friend or social fun kind of network, that also can lead to potential board recruiting or one-offs, rather than just looking at people who you absolutely know on the first kind of degree.
And I think that goes back to the point that you had of having a strategy and really identifying what your needs are, because then when you do reach out to these networks of friends, you have a specific ask versus, hey, anybody who just wants to join a board, which then the question is, well, what do you do on it? Like, what's the purpose of it? What is expected of me? And if you don't have those answers because you didn't strategize of what holes you're trying to fill or needs you have, looks like we lost Ryan. Ryan, I'm gonna talk until you come back on. So let me go ahead. That is not the ideal look that we want to leave Ryan with. Okay, so I am going to, the difficulty with our software is if they get disconnected, the scene that they're left with is they're just frozen on the last moment that they were on. And Ryan was like mid-listen. So as soon as Ryan reconnects, I'll bring him back on here. But what I was trying to say was what Ryan was talking about of really strategizing first, figuring out your needs and what would be most helpful before you go out and recruit is going to be so important, because when you do see, the network of people that you can reach out to and ask, you can give them a specific ask or help guide them with the type of person you're looking for, so that it's easier for them to think of a suggestion. Because like I said, oh, here's Ryan. Okay, let me bring you back on. There you go.
About that note about meeting in person is better than some technology.
I was just like, wow, Ryan waited till he stopped talking, and as soon as I start talking, he like cuts off. Like he's like, forget it, I'm out. No, I'm just kidding. But I was explaining how you're.
I've done that in hostile. Well, not hostile. I mean, very tense negotiations. Like, okay, we're done with this meeting. But anyway.
No, but I was going back to your point, your initial point of strategizing, having a strategy of being able to identify exactly where your needs are, so that when you do reach out to a friend of a friend or your network, you have a specific ask so that they can now visualize the ideal candidate or suggestion because they know what you're looking for, right? Versus just like, hey, anybody know anyone who wants to join a board? And what does that even mean, right?
I think you need to also set that on that last point. I think you definitely need to set expectations. People are a lot of times for newer or more unexperienced organizations is like, hey, do you want to join a board? Yeah, sure, that'd be great. And they think it's going to be like a hangout thing. And it's like, yeah, people are like, oh, I think I'm going to do beach cleanup, when you're actually sitting in a conference room talking about how to fundraise and kind of like that. Yeah. So I think you need to realize what it is for and what the ask you're making and be as specific as possible. I do think there is a value in learning from somebody is, no, I don't want to do that. That isn't, no, I don't want to help your organization. I could be a donor or something. That is, no, I don't want to do that. But when you thrust upon these kind of open-ended, hey, you want to join a board, it always kind of just sounds nice in principle. And then when somebody, like I said, is sitting there on a Sunday afternoon in the heat because you're using another nonprofit's conference room and there's no air conditioning, it's kind of like, this kind of sucks. But I think I wanted to also specify when I talked about networking going events, what's another valuable tool? To be honest, is going to a like or similar organization or an event, because the people interested in the same or similar thing as your smaller or as a bigger one, that goes back to, that doesn't mean they're not interested in yours. They just haven't heard or you haven't communicated it. And so that's why I said, yeah, maybe they are a huge dollar donor but that maybe they're interested in your smaller organization as kind of a hobby or pet kind of project to kind of help you grow. So, and you already know that to some extent, if it's a similar, same organization purpose, they have the same kind of set value beliefs and causes.
Yeah. With that being said, that was what I was going to ask you next. When we're talking about, like, say, throwing out and communication on social media and such as far as recruiting goes, I can imagine that for people who are maybe unfamiliar with an organization and such, would it make sense to you, if putting on your hat as a potential board recruit, that organizations do something similar to like open house? Like when I'm imagining like schools, you're bringing in potential parents, right? And you want to show them all that your school is about and stuff, and get them bought in with your culture. Would it the same be applicable to your nonprofit, where you have kind of like an open house where you're inviting the public, people that you are connected with, whoever, so that they can see and learn more about your organization, but also see what possibly the board experience would be like, which might make it an easier ask.
So I'm going to tell everybody some bad news, and that is, with all this, we have built a fancy technical, legal, civil world with Facebook tech giants. We have electric cars, and we have great needs and nonprofits, and we have these huge. What I have determined is people are really bad at communicating. Like, they're terrible, and that sometimes includes me. Is that we rely a lot on assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we're using social media, when I was criticizing technical aspects, we have these wonderful devices that have huge sums of knowledge and information, but we're going to look at the latest cat meme for hours on. But it was like, so communication, right, is not just talking, but it is also listening and kind of absorbing. But when you're trying to craft a message and get it out there, a lot of people think if I put it out into the ether of social media, people automatically know.
Right.
And no, it's a lot of follow-up. And that's why I said our communication is bad. So your idea about an open house or messaging is that, yeah, I think it shows authenticity. A lot of people think, oh, I filed my government paperwork and I have a website or I have a Facebook page. Ta-da, people. I was like, there are people today who still don't realize what kind of law I practice. And I think I feel from my end, and that's why I said we're bad at communicating, but we're also bad at analyzing our own communications. We just assume.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I talk about it nonstop, and then there are people who are like, oh, I had no idea you did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to your point and credit is that, yeah, I think having that, but I don't think just doing that on its own. You need to be committed to, maybe you record it and you repeat it and reshare it and just keep it ongoing as, hey, this is our open house from November 23rd, 2021 about our this is who we are, right? There is a reason why for-profit and nonprofit large corporations spend so much on marketing and community outreach dollars, and it has the polish and sheen of fancy videos, and that where we whip out the very, very, very expensive audio visual and the makeup that makes us look 20 years younger. And it has that nice soft music, and it was like, but there's a purpose to it. It isn't just to have a marketing expense to write off. This is a good solid video, and it allows us to repeat that message on our corporate channels, television commercial, Facebook ad, right? It allows people to transmit that on, because this goes back to the problem I said. People's attention spans are now divided, and especially for younger, it's on multiple things. So maybe somebody's preferred social media is Instagram. Well, if you're only posting on Facebook, then they're not going to see your open house. They're not going to know anything, and you could be missing out on somebody who's really great at doing Instagram posts, which is something you might need for outreach, right?
Yeah.
So I think the reality is, for any small business owner or small nonprofit board of directors, is get comfortable with the tools and be prepared to repeat your message over and over again. And if it's doing an open house and recording that, hey, come join, ask me anything, or what our organization's all about, is, hey, we're going to record this, but we're also going to keep resharing this.
And to that point too, the board members are also great marketing tools. So it's important that they have the same message that's in line with what your organization is putting out there, so that it's consistent. Because so often, I've talked to people who are on boards, and then when you ask them, oh, that's an interesting organization that you're on the board of, I haven't heard of that. What do you guys do? and sometimes they've had difficulty explaining what they do, and of all people,
I
they
don't
should
really
be the
know.
one. Right? Yeah, it's like
I just kind of sit there and show. Yeah. So this goes back to the onboarding and
Right.
engagement process I was talking about. If you're a medium or larger size organization, having a new director kind of break out into standing committees or being a mentee of a more older senior director or officer and shepherding them through a major project is a great way for them to learn about the organization's program and activities. I'll just use an example from my Young Lawyers Division's days. The Young Lawyers Division is mainly responsible for a lot of the access to justice program. So it does legal lines, moot court competition, junior judges, all these various things to expose people to the law, legal justice, and attorneys. But what happens is because we have elections and rotating directors and new officers, usually when putting together the committee and when we roundtable at an initial meeting at the beginning of the year is trying to match and mix somebody who has experience running the project or at least having an open line of communication and a newer member or newer director learning from them the ropes. So that's how you continue succession and kind of transmitting institutional knowledge of always kind of pairing somebody a little bit older with somebody a little bit younger or newer to the organization. And that is how they learn the ins and outs or different parts of the programs and activities. Whereas when you just have no purpose, I guess, and
Right.
you're just trying to fill bodies around a table, I don't know what we do.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's like, I'm just kind of here.
Right.
That might be good for the treasurer type of member is like, I'm here to just write checks.
Yeah.
But for the other, especially for time and talent, you kind of want them to know what's going on.
Yeah, it almost is like the saying, like, put them in a position to succeed. Like give them the opportunity to really fulfill what their potential could be as a valued asset to the organization versus just filling a space to say, oh, yep, we have a full board, right?
Yeah, I think overall, when you're recruiting and onboarding, I think taking tips from HR especially treating it kind of like almost a part-time employee, even though you're not compensating a volunteer director or board member, is, and you don't have to be kind of overly stuffy with kind of for-profit corporate policy and stuff, but just understand that this is a training process, not only for you in the recruiting, but also for them as they're joining.
Yeah.
Is that it's not like, yay, you're here, you're going to solve all our problems. The payoff isn't immediate, and I would treat it exactly that as an investment of time and commitment on their part, but also yours to help them make sure they're going to succeed. And, I understand that's a really rare quality sometimes in a kind of a very busy, hectic world, but I think the fruitfulness of it will come in terms of those emotion and feelings of you've been up for 24 hours and you just finished a fundraising event. You're all sweaty and kind of exhausted, but you pulled it off. There is that pat on the back moment of, hey, we did it together. Or you've spent all day with the kids and are just so mentally exhausted because to get donors together, teams, uniforms for a sports event, or even a beach cleanup or a hike cleanup is that, oh my God, we have to get insurance and make sure everything is like health, safety. But the payoff and reward, especially knowing that you showed up and a newer board member showed up and they're committed to this task, is the reward in itself. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but there is that level of gratitude, Thanksgiving, level of gratefulness and appreciation of we sweated this and did this really hard thing together and we did some good. So yeah, if you have board members like that, you want to do everything you can in your power to kind of keep them, but also instill with them is, hey, you should go out and look for new board members. And that's another thing. We kind of hinted at it, and we've been talking only about smaller and newer or growing ones, but I don't think the quest looking for new board members ever ends, especially for a growing organization or even a large one. You should always be doing it, and that's why going back to the 3Ts or other methodologies about recruiting and onboarding is it should be strategic but flexible, because it should be an ongoing kind of process.
Yeah. Otherwise, what's the point of having a board if it's not really that part of the organization, right? It's just a formality, right?
I know a lot of board members that kind of have that voluntold policy of, you can't leave the board until you find your replacement. It's tongue in cheek, but it is kind of true that, hey, if you leave, we're down a person, so we would really appreciate it. We know we can't keep asking of you, but can you help us find somebody in your network that might be a good kind of, or reach out? So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind or keep in the back kind of situation is that anybody who joins, probably you'll want them to make a 1 or 2 year commitment at least, and then say, hey, we understand if this isn't for you or other things come up. Can you help us try and look for somebody else? And have that in the back of their mind.
Well, Ryan, this has been super awesome, very helpful. I'm so glad that you were willing to take time out of your busy schedule to sit down and go over this with us and our our nonprofits here.
I'm always happy to make time for you, Nolan. You guys are great. Whether it be all the way during geometry class or all the way to now of being on your great stream, I also think you guys do great things for small business. And, I hope when the pandemic subsides, we can go back to possibly having some of those small business roundtables. But
yeah,
you guys are doing awesome. I'm always very enthusiastic. And on the emotional and the, it's been tough times for all of us, for everybody. And I love your expression of vulnerability, authenticity, because I think it's a great voice to have. It's easy to put the sheen on. It's easy to put the ring light and the filter on. But I think people knowing that there are people at the end of it, I think that's what it's all about. And especially, too, for this I can put fancy words, charts, nonprofit November kind of content out there, but at the end of the day, we are talking about people, which is why I said it's okay to have these tools and strategy, but you got to do the reach out.
Yeah.
And your reach out is why I decided to kind of join you, because it's you.
Oh, well, I really appreciate it, and I'm really grateful of what you've been doing for the month of November on your social media, dedicating information and resources to nonprofits. So I know November we still got a few more days left in there. So for those who are watching here that would like to see what you've put out and continue to receive some of that helpful information, where can they find you and these kind of awesome posts?
So hopefully eventually I'll get it onto our website, which is HughBourdenave.com.
How do you spell Bourdenave? I get the Hugh part.
It's H-E-W, so the Chinese kind of Hugh that we've adopted for English, but Bourdenave is B-O-R-D-E-N-A-V-E. Okay. It's French. So my business partner has a French last name. But if you look for HughBourdenave.com, that's our main website, which will eventually get everything. But right now, for the Nonprofit November content that you're talking about, just look for at RKHughESQ on Twitter and Instagram. It's the easiest way for me because I repost to both. But there's also Hugh Bourdenave, what I just spelled, HEWBORDENAVE LLP. So we're a limited license. Liability Partnership. If you look for that, you will see the Nonprofit November content. And just as a preview for your lovely watchers, I should, if I have enough time today, post 5 alternatives to starting a 501c3 nonprofit. A lot of people always put their best intention of wanting to start one without with underestimating how much paperwork and time and exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So there are alternate ideas. So I think people might find that valuable. And then I have a couple of last items for the end of the month before we roll out into December. So
awesome.
That's how you can find me.
Well, Ryan, I know we took a lot of, I promised you we'd be shorter than this, but you've been very generous with your time and sticking around. Yeah, we've been here for a while.
I thought it was an hour, so I was like, attorney mind, billable hour, so we'll just go for the hour.
Oh, well, shoot, I cut us, I left off 8 minutes of value here, but no, this was super helpful, and I on behalf of our viewers, thank you for donating your time to us today, and as a friend, thank you for always just being supportive. And who knew that, however many years ago that was in those classrooms, that we'd still be connected in this way, and so it's really awesome. I thank you.
I really think we have special small business, and when I say small, I don't mean that in the pejorative way. I just mean no, we like to keep it tight knit. It's you and your wife, or and Hawaii has a lot of that special. I think it's continuing on that mom and pop tradition, but there's a lot of these solopreneurs or social entrepreneurs that keep things tight and small. And I think you're one of them in creative media and kind of reach out. And I think that's refreshing. It makes it easier to work with. It's less stuff. And that's not me trying to be mean for larger, whereas it's just easier, more fun to do it this way as a collaboration or a talk story.
I agree. Well, you make it fun and you make it easy, so that a lot of it is on you, so you can take some credit for that. But Ryan, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thanks for having me, and until next time, stay healthy and safe, and hopefully I'll see you around sooner than later.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, my friend.
Same to you, and give the dogs, kids, and wife love.
Yeah. same to you and your dogs. Is it dog or dogs?
Dogs. I have 2 dogs.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Maybe we'll get them all together for a play.
We can have a dog show.
Yeah, let's do that.
Dog show.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about dog law.
All right, take care. Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, bye.
All right, thank you so much again to Ryan for that. That was awesome. I hope you guys got some really great info and help with that. Of course, if you have any questions that you want me to forward to him, or the conversation doesn't just stop there. We still can have other guests, because this topic is so complex and there's so many different points of view and ideas. So we still have probably other resources as well that we could tackle on this or other topics that we've covered in the past. So please continue to send us questions, ideas, and suggestions as to what we could cover. But next week, I think we are not going to be doing an episode on our normal Tuesday 12:30 time. Whether we do an episode at all next week depends on kind of how our projects go. We're this fourth quarter is like crazy time for us traditionally, and this year is no different. So we have a ton of amazing, fun, exciting projects, but that also has limited us. That's why Jamie unfortunately couldn't join us today, because she's working on a really tight deadline. But next week, I believe we will not be able to make Tuesday's date. We might be able to reschedule to another time in the week, but just stay tuned. Either stay connected to us on Facebook, Instagram, or through our email newsletter. which you can subscribe to if you haven't already by going to our website, popcm.me. I don't know how to pull it up here. Jamie's the technical guru. So just go to our website, popcm.me. And I think at the bottom of the page is where you can click to join our newsletter. And that'll, connect you with us, and we'll be able to update you like, hey, we're going to be going live, on this day at this time. But yeah, and if you want to email us, info@popcm.me is how you connect to us. Other than that, have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. And until next time, bye.